My name is Alvin Emory. They call me Rob. I am 61 years old. I was born in 1956 in Wilmington, Delaware, the General Hospital. My mother and my father, they found out when I was about 3 years old that my uncle was taking family pictures, that my right eye was crossed, my right arm was hanging by pictures. So they went to a doctor and they sent me to AI Institute, and where they went ahead and they found that when I was diagnosed with cerebral palsy, they went ahead, of course they had many names that people don't use today, but as I was growing up, my family was really supportive. My mother was very supportive on teaching me to do the basic things. And when I was of school age, they sent me to a John G. Leach, thinking that I had special needs. Kind of find out that with them trying to teach me and train me how to use the right arm and right hand to write, that I was completely left-handed, which I did find out. Back then, my parents tried to find everything left-handed, and there was nothing made. It's always for right-handed. I went ahead and, with my mother teaching me, and I got a tutor to help me keep up with my studies. From first grade to 8th grade, I was in John G. Leach, and then they sent me to a special education through the Colonial School District. And then they found out that that pace was too slow. So it more or less hurt me on my learning process. So we had to regroup and find other ways and means to teach. As time went on, they told my parents that I would not graduate. I would not get a diploma. And my parents weren't happy about that. So they would come back and forth to Dover, Delaware, to the Board of Education, and I did end up with a diploma, because my mother got me tutors. I had special teachers that worked with me like they would do for like anyone else. But I think the support system that everybody needs is family and friends.
So when you got older, you were in the Air Force?
No, I was in the Civil Air Patrol. With society adapting today, but back then they didn't. Again, I had my parents and my aunt and uncle. They would help me find. I had the opportunity to become a firefighter. They would not let me in until they could see what I could do. My uncle went to a couple board meetings and said give him the opportunity. Kind of find out after I was taught by a couple instructors that I was very good on search and rescue. As time went on, I went to the Delaware Air Patrol, and I specialized in search and rescue. And because you look for people, you move, you try to help other people, and that's what I like to do.
What did you do in Arizona then?
Just last week, we went to a National Disability Council conference, and I learned a lot. It seemed to be not overwhelming, but a lot of good information and how things are turning out since the early days of the 50s and 60s. And once George Bush signed in 1990 the ADA, I think this country's went forward. And you see a lot of people that have a disability are really trying to be independent than they were years ago. People try to hold people back, and you can't do that.
Tell me about when you wanted to sign up, you had to sign up to be drafted.
Well, in '74, after I graduated, I was sent a notice to that I was drafted to go to the Naval Hospital in Philadelphia. They set up a bus for a group of us to go. I went, and with that, I was stood in line with 3 or 4 other guys, and with that said, I'm standing there. I had a shirt on because it was cold, and they let us have that. And when I got up to my turn, they asked me to roll up my sleeves. And I rolled up my sleeve on the right side, and I just pulled up my left. And they asked me why I didn't roll it up. And I said, I thought that I had it pulled up. No, I said, roll it up. I said, I cannot. He said, what's wrong? I said, there's nothing wrong. I just cannot use my right side. I said, I have cerebral palsy. And he said, well, you come with me. So they took me in his room and they did a exam. And they said, okay, well, you cannot join the armed forces. We're going to give you a rejection notice. It's called 4F. Mm. So that's what they did.
So I bet your mother was happy. I
Yes.
would have been.
Yeah, she didn't want me to even go to that part.
And what about your girlfriends?
Well, as I was growing up, as I said, I was accepted because I didn't hide anything. I did what I did. I do what I do. And I had one girlfriend in high school. I had later on, I didn't have many, but later on I got a job after graduation, become a chauffeur. I was taking the cars to getting cleaned and detailed. That was my job, and chauffeur the family. And one car wash I went to frequently. You know, I think after about the 5th or 6th time, this guy and his girl was talking, and she told the guy that she would make a bet with him that she can get me to call her. So we got to talking, and I guess I said the wrong thing. I said, well, you can call me. So she did, and come to find out, her friends was a good friend of mine that I grew up with. We went to meet them one time, and we all went out for pizza. At that age group, you went out for pizza a lot. So we did, and then I asked her out again, and we got acquainted, and we married. We've been married 41 years, 2 children, boy, girl, and she found out at 57 that she had cancer. Of course, we try to take care of that. We're lucky in society to do what we can. But my daughter and her were going to go shopping, and my daughter says, Mom, you don't feel well. Why don't you stay here? Because moms don't get sick. So she said, okay. So my daughter came back and she says, I'm going to take you to the ER. And that's the same day we found out that she had cancer in the lung, and she also had brain cancer. We found out that happened that quick. We had the best care, and she passed on June 11th of 16. And I mean, we were together 41 years, and my son and I were talking one day. He said, Dad, you know you went from your parents to your wife? I said, yes, I know, but your mother raised me too. And which they usually do. But yeah, my wife and I did pick everything together. We had a older gentleman that was our neighbor, and he used to get a kick out of us because we would work together out in the backyard or garden, or we would cut grass. And he just says, oh, I see, I don't have to go watch TV, I can watch the show right here. And he would just laugh. I mean, but it was all good. Not laughing because we couldn't do nothing, and I always had a saying, after we've been together for so long, I said, well, 3 hands are better than 2. So we kid. But you know, with people with disabilities, I was taught to be positive. And I had the opportunity to join many organizations. One was a Masonic order, which I became a Shriner. I wanted to become a Shriner because I wanted to help people. I wanted to volunteer. With that said, of course, you join the Shriners, you join a unit. So I thought, well, marching was my forte because of the CAP taught you how to march. Well, these gentlemen, I think I was there for about 3 weeks, and they were telling me they're going to competition. And my leg, I couldn't really march correctly. So this gentleman came up to me and said, you know, I hope I don't hurt your feelings, but we really would like to go and win this competition. These are older, retired Army professionals, you know, that have past experience, you know. And I understood. So he said, but I'll give you like a recommendation. Why don't you join the clown unit? I said, I want to be no clown. I don't know what that was either. So I went to the meeting, and after 2 or 3 meetings, I joined. And I didn't know what kind of character to be. And they asked me if I would like to be a Keystone Cop clown. So I had to develop a costume with the makeup. And the gentlemen in that unit, as the Shriners are, they're very aged. They start from 60 to 98. And these guys are very active, very polite, and very fun to be with. I had the best time ever. When they would teach you how to use your makeup and help you with your costume and stuff like that. I went to a first competition, and with the makeup I won, and the award was $10,000.
Oh my God.
But with Shrineham, you donate the money back to like the burn centers or the Children's Hospital. When my wife was there at the event when I got the check, and I went back and I said, yeah, we won $10,000. She said, good, what can we do with this? Well, I want to donate it to the Shriners Hospital. She said, why do that? We could use it. I said, honey, but we're here to help the children. She said, yeah, you're right. So, I mean, we did take everything together. I would join a mobilization like the Moose and the Elks, and she says, I'll go with you, but don't sign me up. But, and as my children were growing up, they went with us, and they had a good time. Because when you travel, we had a good time. We did it as a family. I never left my children behind. In fact, we never went on a vacation without our children because we loved it. We asked our children what they would like to do, and sometimes we had to make plans, and it worked out.
So how did you start your business?
Well, what got me was I was looking for jobs, a good career, because prior going back to when my wife and I were going to get married, I couldn't find a good paying job. The job I was telling you about that I was a chauffeur, I drove him with the cars. He and I were talking, and I just couldn't make enough staying with him. So I heard that Atlas Point ICI in Newcastle were hiring, in which my family worked for. Because back then, big companies hired families. And with that said, I had the opportunity to go in for a job interview, got hired, but because it was a labor job, they kept me that day to see if I could do it, and then I couldn't, they let me go. They said, but don't be disappointed, we have a position opening in a year. So at that point, you know, you're heartbroken, you know, you wanted to get married, you want to get a good job, you want to have a good career. So they did call me back in a year. And as time went on, the company went through many changes, many name changes, and I've been with them for 35 years. I did some different jobs, but my primary job was custodial. I was able to train over a couple hundred people on clean rooms, packaging, storeroom cleaning, and train people, and a few people they put through because they all start for either packaging or custodial, and a lot of my supervisors or managers I trained. So they and I had a good rapport, but I trained others. And but one day I wanted to go find a part-time job, to travel and stuff like that. And I had one job working in a package store, but as you get, you want something different. So I looked around, and I went ahead and I couldn't find anything because no one would hire me because they didn't think that I was capable. So I said, well, what can I do? And I got to thinking. I said, how do you start a business? So I looked into it. I made calls, because I'm audio visual. So, but then computers and I did not get along. We still don't. But I made some calls. I asked a lot of questions, and I started a business with a license, insured, and a corporation. I wanted to do it right. And then my wife and I were doing it, my daughter was doing it, my son was doing it. And as my son would call it, a part-time business. But back then, a lot of office cleaning, commercial cleaning was done at night. We would have 4 or 5 contracts at a time. A lot of contracts would be for a year to 2 years, and then they get reposted or rebid because they don't want the same people all the time. But we had 3 accounts actually for 8 to 10 years because we had a good staff. We trained people ourselves. We were on site. Yes, we were owners, but we were also workers. We didn't just stand there and collect the money. We were really involved. With my learning process with AstraZeneca, that's why I retired from, but that a lot of vendors used to give classes, so that's how I learned to do a lot of things. I'm self-taught on how to use the machines because of the dexterity of my right side. I can buff and scrub with one hand. People ask me how you do it. I said, no, you just use 2 hands, but you have to form your body because I have to use my body to function. And that's what I did. I was bruised up a lot, but I learned a lot. But as you get comfortable and you learned and you start using your thoughts, your process, And as I went on, I trained people. I was in an auto accident in 2012. I was in a decision to either close the business or put it on hold and whatever. My son and I got talking, and he said, because he's been doing it since 8 years old, but he gave up a lot becoming a policeman. He's going to college, so he did this on my behalf. So he took the business. I gave him the business. I worked for him. The experience I had is also I've been a client of the Delaware VR, the vocational rehabilitation, and I tried to get assistance by them, but as things went on, I just didn't know where to go or whatever. So he came in and he helped me develop a lot of programs. He's seen my struggles. My daughter's seen my struggles. My daughter had started my first business with me. She started when she was 10 years old. And then she left and went to Christiana Hospital, Telegram Center. When my son, too, he done floors, they done carpets, they learned a lot. They were self-taught because I would show them, but they would actually, then one day they both came to me and said, Dad, we're better than you doing floors. I said, that's good. So see, you had to have a good sense of humor and you got to hear the positive things. I don't believe in, and my son had started with our cleaning company, a cleaning academy for people with disabilities, vets, and retirees. And a lot of people would come in and look at it, and then I would show them some things. I would work with people that I figured that I could keep them comfortable. My son was very patient. My son's very good, skilled with people. He doesn't try to please them. He don't try to undermine them. And with people with disabilities are powerful more than people think. They have strength. They have knowledge. But some people don't know how to bring it out. So he tries to bring it out in people. And I do too. One student told me one day he didn't want to do this. I said, why? He says, I can't do it. I said, excuse me, I can't do it. I said, You can't do what? I can't do this. I said, excuse me. We don't say can't. Say try, and we'll find a way. I will find a way. Brant will find a way to help you so you can, because we wanted them to, a lot of them are on funding or some kind of low income, but we wanted to help people get a better life so they can make money and have pride and travel and do what they want. That was our goal. And he helped me fulfill my dream. With my learning capabilities, I could do anything, but I could never put anything on paper. I could use a computer, but I guess, like I was just told, it's like a disconnect. I would start something, and then I couldn't complete it. So that's where he helped me. So in 2013, my wife and I discussed it. I signed the business over to him because he developed it great. So, you know, he helped me establish. We're really good. In fact, we have several contracts that he's developed. He has over, I believe, 60 people working for him. And I go to like a lot of council meetings. I go to a lot of VR meetings. They ask questions. We do teaching from the counselors to schools. We try to go to schools. We can go to hotels and train people. We can do restaurants. We can do like many things that a lot of people don't have time for or patience. But you're not teaching a child. You're teaching an adult that has not had the knowledge or skill or background with help. And we do not feel that they cannot do it. I feel that with the backing of I've had, we're giving them the same backing. And now he has students calling him, thanking him. And a lot of people wanted us to come back for just retraining because they'd like, because they would go find a job or we help them with jobs. And they said, well, we're told that we need to do this. So they go back to the VR and they help get the funding and they come back. They don't want anybody else to show them anything. They want us to do it because they're comfortable. But we told them, eventually, we're here for you. And we don't just stop the class after 6 weeks. It goes on. Call us. And there's a lot of night jobs. So we just have to do it. And we do that because people, and there's a lot of people on the bus line. People use paratransit, so we train them how to use that too. So that's a lot of things that my son Brant had developed over time.
But you were the role model.
I think so. I hope so.
Me too. What about your Votex school on Churchman's Road? Is that?
Well, that's what I'm
that
talking
was
about.
it?
Mhm.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
And you're welcome to call him and make an appointment to see us sometime. That way,
So, cool. And Alvin's professional services. So, and then, what happened when you had your heart surgery?
Well,
Was that the same year your wife was so sick?
yes.
What a
Well, what
terrible
happened
year.
was that year was a tragic year. When we found out my wife had cancer, I stayed home. My family, my son took a lot of time that he needed. My daughter, she had good support with her job, so we took care of my wife. She was in and out of hospital, not frequent, not a lot. I stayed home. We did things. We went and got because we had good insurance, so we got the wheelchair. I transported her. I took her out to lunch, took her out to dinner. We tried to keep a normalcy. We started on like one day a week, we would have a pizza party. The grandkids would come over and something like that. And I went ahead and got a lift chair for her because she wanted to be independent. like I said, I was in another car accident, but I did get some treatment, but I only work around her schedule because she was my first priority. When my family was not available, or when they were, I would go get treatment. So she and I had a lot of good discussions. My daughter and my son and my grandchildren, they understood everything. My grandchildren, as young as they are, they understood, because life is life. And it's hard, but every day I think about her.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry.
So did you have your heart attack before or after?
No, what happened was, in August, I felt like I was full. Like, you know how you eat a holiday dinner and you get over stuff and you have to lay there until you can feel it?
Yeah.
Well, that happened for a week and a half, and I said, this is just not me. So I went to the doctor. Oh, no, excuse me. I went into the ER, and they sent me home with fluid pills. And they made me an appointment with a doctor, and I said, I can't wait. Well, kind of found out I had AFib. Okay, so I went to the heart surgeon, doctor, and they took care of me. They treated me. I felt a little bit better. They took tests, and as tests come on, they said, your heart on top is great, but the bottom of your heart is very, very weak. So they said, we would like to do open heart surgery. And I said, fine. They said, well, we're going to do it in about 3 to 4 weeks. I said, no, you got to do it now. I can't. So I took myself back to the ER and said, just keep me here, please, until we get something. So they gave me open heart surgery 2 days after I got there. And the surgeon had marked my legs for the veins and went through the process. And I had the surgery. They told me what they did. One thing they were telling me in the technical terms. So please tell me in terms that I would understand. He says, like hot wire in a car. But they did not have to use the veins. They just used what was there. So they cleaned it up real well. I went to therapy for 6 weeks. I went back for my 6 weeks checkup. I asked the doctor if I could be off the medicine. So he started to wean me off, because we're working with a drug company, I didn't want to stay on it for a long time because I felt that was more harm than good. And again, with having a disability, I try to explain to them, I had to be active, so I can't lay here, because they wanted to put me in a nursing home for 30 days. And work with me therapy. I said, how long is therapy? It's 20 minutes a day. And my son and my daughter said, no, he can stay home and we can move him. So as time went on, I would just move around the house. And I didn't drive for weeks, but I would go up and down the stairs slowly. I wanted to keep moving because I had to stretch my right side. And that's natural for me, because that's part of my life. But I had that. So that was the 3 things that happened last year. Now, when my wife was passing Christmas Eve, I had her car. And I was in an auto accident. Where was her car? And so that was before we started, when we had a back and forth. And I never been in a car accident, but I was hit 3 times. Twice since then. It's just like, wow. But life goes on. You got to be positive. You can't sit there and struggle. You just have to do the best you can.
And tell me about the things you do related to health issues in public.
I'm sorry?
Tell me about your activities.
My activities?
Yeah, related to helping people.
What I like to do, well, one, I'm on the Delaware Delaware Disability Council. Delaware Disability Council. I'm sorry about that. And I joined that a year before, and I was able to go to a lot of meetings. I belong to Adults with Issues. I'm hoping to be part of the policy making. Like I said, I like to volunteer, but this actually, I like it because you get involved to help not just one or two groups, you help the country because it makes the laws. You help fight for people that cannot speak up for themselves. And it's just not people with aging or disabilities or vets. It's everybody has an advantage of this. And they don't realize that. And I know I'm towards the aging group, but I'm 61 years old, but I feel 24. I don't feel like, the age is a barrier or the disability is a barrier. I think it's your way you think. And there's days that you don't feel well, but that's everybody. There's days you wish you could just do something, just change your routine. I like to talk to people, discuss to people with how they feel and give them ideas. Like I said, I'm very fortunate, again, going backwards, to having a big family at one time, good support system, and usually, as you know, as you get older, you lose contact with your family or your children, but I didn't. My children never looked at me like that. My grandchildren, my older granddaughter was playing with a friend one day, and the girl asked my granddaughter, "Oh, what's wrong with your pop-pop's hand?" She said, "What's the problem?" Because she didn't think about it, because it's normal. And she said, "There's nothing." "Why?" "Oh, what do you see?" "Well, his hand." And that's all the little girl knew how to say. She said, "There's nothing wrong." So see, it's how you perceive things too. People will ask me, or you can hear them say, "Well, because I was always told, oh, you can't do that." Well, I don't try to prove myself. I try to do the best I can. I'll try something, or I'll get the help. My son and daughter was always me, because I'm not mechanically inclined. So either, because I said I worked, so I always worked, and I saved some money aside to get a plumber or electrician or build something. I pay people to do that. It's not that I had the money, but it's something that I wanted done right, and you had to have it done right, you pay people. And that's what society does. But a lot of people don't think about that. But I was very fortunate to have a good job to do that. And my wife was able to stay home with my children. At times she worked occasionally, or she helped raise our grandkids.
And tell me about your mother.
Well, my mother she had tried to have children, and they told her to stop. And she said, "Why?" She said, "Well, you have a bad heart." She had a half a heart that was good, and they told her if she bears a child that she could possibly die. So she was willing to do so. So she went to a specialist, and the specialist said, "Well, the only thing that we could tell you is if you want to take the chance, it's a very high risk. But you have to stay in bed, only get up to go to the restroom, bathe, or eat." And that was it for the whole 9 months, or whatever it took. So she did. And I was told that because the trimesters and stuff like that, I didn't develop. That's how I developed cerebral palsy, because I wasn't able to turn, because she wasn't able to move. Like today's society, they can keep a normalcy. Some do like walking, some do like jogging, some stay active. Where back then, they didn't believe in that. My mother was really strong-willed, because her mother and father were strong-willed. My grandfather owned what they call a slaughterhouse back then. It was a meat cutting. Yeah. But he and my uncle, well, he raised 8 kids of his own. My uncle raised 8 kids. And that's why I was fortunate to be in a family on my mother's side where I didn't notice a difference. But the difference was at 12 years old, I just learned how to ride a bike by a 6-year-old, my cousins. My cousin, my other cousin, she taught me how to play cards. We would walk every day. We walked to the store because they lived in town, so everything was walking distance. Holidays, we would have holidays together. We would eat. I didn't know where I lived because I lived at home, but I was always at my grandparents' every single day because it was family. My father's side was very strong and very will too, very big. I grew up with many cousins, so like I said, and I have one cousin on my father's side that we're really close to. My mother's side, everybody's passing for one thing or another, but that's why I have my daughter, my son, and my grandkids. We're a very strong unit. I think as a person with a disability, I call it a ability. And that's one thing I tell our students. You don't look at a disability. That a person that is lazy, that's a disability. And that's anybody. It's like with race, and today, we don't look at race, gender, or culture. We're all one, and we got to remember that. If we don't remember that, then we can't be human beings. And I think we're in a good position to do that today, because there's more understanding of who's who, not what's what.
How old were you when ADA passed? You were already a grown-up, right?
Yes, it was in 1990. I can't do the math that quick, but yes, I was actually employed at that time. I was in, I had my family,
Did it make a difference?
very much so.
Yeah.
I think what happened, it set the path of job movement, job advancement, good resources. I hate to see that go if that ever happens. I hope not. But people don't know where to go. You just need to contact good agencies. Your vocational rehabilitation is one of the best processes. In fact, that's where you really start today. I mean, Delaware had developed it so it's easier. If you go to on employment for a job, and they'll refer you to them for either skill or trade or learning. I'm fortunate I have a diploma. But the ADA in 1990, when I was talking about George Bush, I think it was one of the best things to happen to the country.
Were you involved in any of the lobbying or anything?
Well, I did a lot of research, but with AstraZeneca and being self-employed made me very strong. I didn't have many hobbies, and I wasn't a workaholic, but I like to stay busy. And like I said, I also volunteered. I enjoy being around people. I like to eat. I like to go to different ethnic places to eat. My wife enjoyed cooking. I enjoy cooking. Of course, I lost a lot of weight since then, but I feel good. But I think, but you still eat well. And that's all I have for that.
And do you feel like your voice is heard? Because you're so powerful and committed to moving things forward.
Well, I don't feel negative. Sometimes I get upset. Sometimes I get angry. Sometimes, I'm not saying I can't control it, but I can. But sometimes I will just voice my opinion. And I feel that sometimes I'm a realist. It's not that I don't want to hear or say or do, but sometimes everybody has to step back and think. It's how you approach things. Yes, I feel that a lot of people don't want to speak up. It's not because they're scared, but they feel it's not going to help. But you got to do something.
And if you had a magic wand, what would you change?
In my life, bring my wife back, and everything be whole again. because we have a good family unit.
And if
And
you-
bring back my family that's passed, but still want to help others. There's not much of a change in negative, none, but in positive, I just hate to see people hurt each other. I'm not being smart and with that comment, but they got to stay together. They got to be a unit, no matter who you are. I know I was raised that if a child's in your home, you're playing with a child, or you have a friend, you always feed them. I was raised like that. You feed people that, as your guest. A lot of people just say, well, some people send their children home after they get done playing until they eat. And that, to me, is wrong, because food is to be shared. And I think that's one of the best times. When me working swing shift, I had to work night shift, the middle shift, and day shift. But my wife and I and children always made it possible to eat one meal a day together. And when we were off in the summer, then we would try to adjust our eating the best we can, because that moment you had together was very powerful.
If somebody was going to write your biography, what would you want them to say about you?
I don't know how to explain that. I mean, I really don't. I like them to be honest. I like them to be open, because I know everybody has strengths, points, or weaknesses. But my goal is going forward and going as in the past is to try to help someone. Like everybody says, volunteer. And yes, I like to volunteer. It doesn't take much time. There's a lot of organizations do take your time. I notice there's a lot of organizations, it's always the same people. I think the age groups, the younger generation don't want to join because they feel they don't have time, in which society does change every, 8, 10, 12 years. But we all need to do something to help each other. And I want to be positive about that.
I like it. So what laws still need to be changed to better the lives of people with disabilities?
Well, I think making sure, like this healthcare problem, that would make everybody equality. I know things aren't free, but when they give you Medicaid or Medicare, you're still liable for so much, and a lot of people can't afford that. So they cut things. I don't mean luxury things, but they cut food, they cut other medicines, or they lose their home. I think society needs to rethink things. Like everybody struggles. I made mistakes in the past that made me have to make a rethink. I made some, like I said, when you have the best you can do, a lot of people give up. And no sense of giving up, and I think that's what happens to a lot of people in society today. They think running away from it, avoiding it, is going to help, and it doesn't.
So, anything else you want to say for the good of the cause?
Well, I think everybody should volunteer. One thing or another they believe in. I think also people today have to understand that we're here together and help each other understand, from family to friends. If someone comes to you and you don't care for them, don't mean you have to push them away, or they don't care for you. That's just the way I feel.
So, what else? I think that's it. So, get to know your neighbor.
Yes. You get to know your neighbor, and I'm not preaching anything, I'm not trying to be stereotyped, but I find it like today, I met you again, I met him, and we're talking. You came back since we met, we talked about the historical history, and that's something that you and I discussed, and we both all remember that. So see, that's a point that if you leave something positive, you always get a lot positive back.